Welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the Leadership Local Pension Board. Welcome to anybody who's going to be watching this on the recording later. Right, start with apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Peter Allen.
Any declarations of interest?
Yes, sorry, I'm a pensioner member of the Lincolnshire Pension Fund, and her daughter is also a contributing member for one of the schools, Lincolnshire schools.
Active member of the pension.
Yeah.
My wife receives the pension from the pensions.
Thank you. Right, so we move to the minutes of previous meeting. Any matters of accuracy? Minutes. I'm going to go through them page by page unless anybody insists. Okay. Any questions arising from this? I did have one that's not covered on the agenda, which was what progress had been made in terms of the information on TPR code compliance that West Yorkshire provided.
My understanding is they've appointed Aon to do a compliance check. I don't know timescales, but maybe Matt.
Yeah, I can pick that up. We've completed level 2, so we've answered all questions. That was actually ridiculous. Like, right from 40 questions. We've got through the module. We had a meeting on Monday, midday, to Tuesday, midday. They did let us out to it. They did let us have a little bit soon. They was face to face, so we've completed the module. We've also identified most all areas we're green or amber. There's very few that we don't meet, but then I would expect if you would that we would be compliant with the So they are going to do a little bit of work on that, and then they're going to present us with a summary and identify the areas that we might need to just reinforce. I think is probably the way to put it. And we have gone through it on every single part of it. So governance, IT, admin, investments, we have fully embraced GCOP, as everybody seems to call it.
That's lovely. So we can expect, the next time Joe does an update,
Yes,
for assessment, that information will fit into.
with the timelines, we're taking it to our group, by decision-making group, joint advisory group, I believe in the January meeting. So I would anticipate it goes to our pension board in March. So I'm not sure. We won't make January's board, Jackson. It's the 15th, isn't it? January the next year. 16th, because it's the 16th.
We haven't changed.
Great big one with the cake. So I anticipate there's something to bring back. It will be.
Are you not happy to update those answers for us ahead of it going to your JAG? Because I presume they will just be.
I'm assuming that I'll sign off. Let me check that. If I can bring it, I'll bring it up.
If we could, because we were hoping to take an update to our January committee.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And board.
Right, thank you for that. Right, pension fund update report.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the standard quarterly paper. Key points on it that I would like to highlight are section 3 on page 12, which updates the board on activity with Border to Coast. Partner funds met in Barnsley at the beginning of the month to look at additional areas for collaboration outside of the investments and prepare for the meeting that we had with HMT and MHCLG as part of the pensions investment review. Further information on that meeting was shared in this week's weekly email, so hopefully you've seen a summary of the discussions there. Last joint committee was held on the 26th of September. The key points from that agenda are shown at paragraph 4.7. Question on divestment that the committee's independent investment advisor, Paul Watson, raised was raised by Councillor Strengle at the JC, and I shared the response with the committee and the board in the weekly the 7th of October. Next JC meeting will be on the 26th of November. Members of the board are reminded if they've got any questions that they would like to ask there, they can be fed through Councillor Stringle or Councillor Coupland. Section 4 sets out a recommendation to approve the first extension to the investment consultants contract to 31st of December 2026. Simons Robertson were appointed in January 2022 for a 3-year period and two-year extensions, and the committee approved the extension at their meeting this morning. Section 5 on page 14 shares information on the latest Section 13 report from the Government Actuaries Department, with a paper from Barnet Waddingham summarising the outcome for Lincolnshire attached. Paragraph 6.6 to 6.9 set out the results against the 4 areas of compliance, consistency, solvency and long-term cost efficiency. And I'm pleased to report the fund met all the criteria of the Section 13 valuation. Section 6, and I've not handed them out, on page 16, introduces a new manual. Josh, could you have that, please? For all committee and board members. And this will hopefully be a useful aid memoir for you. This will be a living document, so we'll update it annually ahead of May elections. Any feedback would be really helpful though. This is something that was requested by our chair of the pensions committee. I can provide it electronically if asked, but I was asked to provide paper manual. So once you've had a chance to look at that, please do provide any feedback. And finally, paper 7, section 7, provides members an opportunity for any comments or questions on the papers that were brought to the pensions committees held in September or the one that was held earlier today. So I will happily take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, can I joke? I'm sure I've covered this with you at an earlier meeting, but on the Barnet Waddingham and the appendix at the back, Lincolnshire's funding level
Yes.
is detailed, and I know this is historic, but the current funding level is below 100%. As I understand, whereas in the document it was 118.2.
So the GAD do a different valuation method to that. So this isn't something that our actuary has produced the valuation of. GAD use a consistent discount rate and assumptions and revalue all the LGPS funds. So there's that level playing field. So according to GAD assumptions, yeah, we're 118% funded. According to Barnet Waddingham, who is the more important one for us because they're the ones that are used for setting contribution rates, I think at the end of June we were 96.5% funded off the top of my head. So this isn't our actual funding level in the real world. This is in GAD's.
Where was the local funding level at the last time you measured?
101, for us, 101%.
But we thought the funding level was reduced because Barnet Waddingham have rebased the methodology, I think. Is that fair as well?
Yes, so in looking at the funding level, how it's actually moved between the 101% down to the 96.5%, earlier this year, they adjusted certain things in the funding model, looking at how the assumptions were for certain asset classes. And then also there was one that was brought in by pressure from auditors about taking account of known inflation, which reduced the funding level again. So there's some factors around how the model has been created that have reduced the funding level, aside to the normal factors that influence the funding level. But the GAD Section 13 report is done on a different basis completely. So they're not comparable, but what the GAD Section 13 does it enables them to look across the whole of the LGPS as a level playing field.
So just one further clarification, please, if I may. Next valuation of the Lincolnshire Fund is next
March
March
25.
31st March, so we're 5 months away. Will that be the funding with that be Barnet Waddingham's starting point at 31st of March 2025 or the valuation? So it's what our Lincolnshire Fund's funding value will be then, rather than where we've been. What I'm trying to say is, will they go back? So the funding level at the 31st of March 2022 was over 100%. We're now under 100%. Is that the starting point for Barnet Waddingham? It's not where we were 3 years ago, it's where we've been rebased.
So what will happen as part of the valuation process is the whole funding model will be looked at. So there will be new assumptions put in, there will be new discount rate put in based on expected investment return going forward from that point of 31st of March 2025. So there will be a movement from looking at 2022 when we were 101%, where we've been through that time, but then it's kind of rebased as such in that the funding model gets re-agreed depending on what the assumptions that they're putting in there, because it's obviously all impacted by demographic assumptions. So there'll be some new longevity information going in there that will change that. The discount rate will be looking at what's our asset allocation going to look like going forward and what are our expected future investment returns. So all I can probably say is everything will be different.
We're going to be in a different place altogether.
Yeah, so every 3 years they basically start again. It's looking at where you are.
It's not incremental, I think. It's
Yes.
basic.
Yeah, my thoughts only, sorry if I'm going on, but my thoughts only were that the employer contributions as at from the 31st of March 22 valuation was based on a different actuarial assessment. So when we come to reset the contributions for 1st of April 2026, everything will have moved.
Yeah, and that happens at every valuation. So this is nothing different. Previously, we had Hyman's who did it in a very different way to Barnett's coming in doing it then. So, but what is looked at, and we had a meeting with the academies yesterday, an employee meeting with the academies, and the kind of the build up to the 2025 valuation was on the agenda, expectations. So the actuary, regardless of what assumptions they're putting into the model, one of the key objectives is ensuring that stability of contribution rate for the underlying employers. So that is all kind of factored in as to when we agree those assumptions, the impact that they will have on contribution rates. Is that reasonable? Is that not? What can we do to try and ensure they're as stable and affordable as possible going forwards? But every 3 years that does get reset anyway. That's just part of the standard process.
Yeah, thank you.
Basic questions in my mind, because you're saying that, if I understand right, that you could have 2, say 3 actuarial firms. They could all do a valuation, economic figures,
Yes.
based on what assumptions they're making. But the valuation firm then has an impact going forward in terms of contribution rates. I'm just trying to think, as you know, we've heard one figure of 96, 118. I'm just trying to think. There's such a difference in range, because that for me, so for a minute, I could sit here and I could and say, oh well, firm A said 96%, firm B said 98%, and firm C said 98%. And I could look at it and go, yeah, fair enough. They're all pretty much in the same ballpark area. That's okay. Then make different assumptions. But that's such a big range. Just for long question, because of the impact it potentially has on contribution rates.
So the Section 13 report has no impact on contribution rates whatsoever. That is solely for ensuring that level playing field for government to say, is this reasonable? One of the tests in there is that consistency test. So are the assumptions that have been made by, and they'll look across all the actuaries and all the funds, are they reasonable? So it could be, for example, so we were quite prudent in our expected future investment returns, our discount rate at 4% back in March 2022. Some had it at perhaps 5.5%. So is that realistic? Well, that depends on your assets, how they're invested. So if you're heavily in equities, you could say that's perhaps more reasonable, but over a 3-year time, you could also have a very negative return on equities. So it's part of that section 13 looks at the work that the actuaries have done. Is that consistent? Is that within expectations, within expected ranges? But there always will be and always has been different outcomes depending on which actuary that you go with. And then it's also down to, the committee. It will be brought in March to the pensions committee to look at the process of how they set assumptions for the committee to approve. And then in July, it comes to committee again for them to approve those assumptions that are being used. So it's within discussion, but it's the actuaries, within the actuaries' remit to set those factors that go into the funding model. But absolutely, it used to say a few years ago, well, if you want to improve your funding position, you move from actuary A to actuary B. I think that's become less so now. I think they have converged more in how they do valuations, and part of that section 13 makes sure you haven't got someone going, let's say we're going to get 20% a year just to really shoot the lights out and keep employer rates really low. But the key thing on top of the funding level is kind of just a figure. What is really important are the contribution rates that the employers pay. And one of the aspects is that requirement to ensure that we keep them as stable and as affordable as possible, while setting that long-term timeline to make sure that we can ensure all employers are 100% funded within their own pots.
Yes. I mean,
Can I just add one thing as well? Clarification aspect. So the member data is also updated at the time of final valuation. Let's suppose if a funding valuation is done now, and if it is done at the time of trial year, the member data will be updated at the time of trial and valuation. 3 years down the line, when the member data is updated, those there would be movement in that data as well. That will impact it.
And I guess really the most essential thing is just having enough cash that once in the future to pay the pensions.
Yeah.
That's the best it.
yes, and that calculation is then a whole load of assumptions. And I can't remember it's in this time section 13 report, but in previous section 13 reports there have been scatter graphs coded by the actuary funds have used. And what you see is clustering of each actuary's funds. They're all very close together on those scatter graphs, which is reassuring in a way that the actuaries are applying their methodologies consistently, although they're all using slightly different assumptions.
The accountant's brain sometimes it just wants to think.
Yeah, I have that problem with actuaries for many years.
Sorry, all out. Just to clarify, one of the reasons, mainly, that I can't recall really, let's say, within a valuation period, that I've ever been aware that we've had a recalculation of the funding level from one to another, from one sort of base to another. But this was driven more by the inflationary pressures, was
There was the issue
Within-
of the impact
it? The economy.
of the mini budget.
Oh,
That
right.
completely skewed what expected returns looked
I
like.
see.
So I think that was a one-off that hopefully we won't see again.
Yes.
But the other one was, yes, driven by a requirement from external auditors that actually, particularly because inflation being such a high figure, had such an impact. If inflation's running at 1-2%, it's not like saying if inflation's going up to 10%, should you be taking that into account, what has happened, particularly in the accounting reports and things, to show that actually we know that the cost of those benefits is going to have shot through the roof. So it was a push by that then updated the funding model. I think Barnett did it for all of their clients. What other actuaries did, I don't know.
Barnett use an economic model to arrive at their discount rate, whereas the other actuarial firms use something that's based on LGPS. So they are very different approaches. and I've had conversations with finance actuaries trying to understand what's happened to funding levels for funds who use other actuaries, because their funding levels have significantly increased because the change in gilt yields has meant that the value of liabilities has fallen like so. Now, whether that's real or not is an interesting philosophical debate, but not one that retain us now.
So the reason some temporary, I say temporary, is relating us to temporary spike in inflation. Might have skewed some stuff. But we're now back, hopefully, to inflation in 2% range.
Yeah, and that will presumably
So that will be built, yeah.
future inflation assumptions.
but the issue is that 10% figure that we had at the end of September in 22 is crystallised in that increased pension pot and that increased benefits by that.
Because strictly speaking, all what we've done is by that big spike come to it, but doing new platform.
You've reset your baseline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions on the update? I did have one. The breaches register. Is that comprehensive in it? Covers all breaches, whether found by West Yorkshire or found in your team? Or is it only the ones that are found in your team?
We are not currently notified of breaches in the West Yorkshire team. We monitor in our team the cash and submissions going in to West Yorkshire. We don't see the other information now that's as part of the governance and oversight that we're looking at and working at with West Yorkshire. There's discussion to be had. Should we be logging more breaches?
Right, moving on. Pensions admin report, Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is West Yorkshire's for the period 1st of April 24 to the 30th of June 24. And point one is about performance and benchmarking. What we've identified here are some of our key performance indicators that haven't met their standards in this period. The full KPI report is an appendix A. With these ones that haven't met, we've put the reasons down and I'll walk you through them. But I'll just sort of take you to the penultimate column on the right-hand side so we can consider that have a priority. So priority one is where a benefit, a payment is to be made, and priority three, where it's just an admin update, change to something on the record, but no payments are made. So at the top of the report is dependent pension set up. We hit 88.89%. The reason for the failure with this is because the information was received and processed just after the most current payroll. So we had to wait until we were able to pay the pension on the next available payroll. So that would be almost 1 month later. And because of that, the clock's still ticking and we didn't meet the key performance indicator. We ran out of dates. We have next interfund linkings actual and interfund linkings quote. Now, interfunds are a transfer of pension benefits between local government funds. And the linking element means that fund will be Lincolnshire to Lincolnshire, so it's a change of employer, or it could be Lincolnshire to West Yorkshire or anyone in our shared service. We have the records and we can link them together. We have had some older cases of backlog. These have been around for at least a year. GAD, Government Actuarial Department, removed all factors that we use in these cases. We didn't replace them for a significant number of months, so we stockpiled. We can do those now, and we're looking at those older cases and the bigger cases with a view to get all the annual benefit statements out and deal with members' tax issues, namely annual allowance. It has been hindered slightly because since February 23, we have seen a spike in interfund linking requests. Or shall I say, in this period, we've seen a spike and that's the largest since February 2023 in 18 months. I'm not really sure why, but I have asked the team to look at that. Interfund actual out, so that's the actual calculation and payment of the benefits to another LG authority. We don't have these calculations currently in our software provision. We are waiting for development and upgrades from Civica. This has meant that the calculation is manual, so it's slower. Not only that, because we need to incorporate age rectification of the cloud, often referred to as the cloud, and the removal of the age discriminations. So there's a second manual calculation that needs to be completed. So these are taken. That's a very poor explanation. Apologies for that. Monthly postings. These didn't meet because we are changing the way postings occur. MC2, as it's written there, is where the employer used to put all the postings, all the data, all the contributions on a spreadsheet, pop it over to West Yorkshire, and then we'd wait through all the errors and liaise with the employer to get it right. MC3 or MP3, as it has been clarified as this week, that's monthly posting 3, including data and cash contributions, is because what's happening now is the employer is filling out their spreadsheet. It highlights their errors, whether it's the fields have not been completed or completed incorrectly. They make the errors correct. They send over the monthly posting to West Yorkshire, and we put them on the records. For the first time since this was rolled out, I think August, these all met the KPI across all funds. It's really good news. Deferred benefits set up on leaving are priority number 3. That's because there are no payments that are made. We get significant numbers of people leaving the fund. What we have to do as a statutory obligation is write to them and say, you have a deferred benefit. We do that within a statutory period of 2 months. And then when we have an opportunity and we have the resource, we calculate the value of that deferred benefit and we send them a deferred statement. We have been looking at some of the older cases. So that may have had a little bit of a knock-on effect to the current KPIs. But I did amend the risk register, that is also one of the appendices, forget which one it is now. And up to June this year, we have cleared 57% of the backlogs. So we've added additional resource and we've looked at these cases. It hasn't finished. We'll keep reporting on that. And if you want some more information on numbers, I can get those as well. The other thing that I should mention, and I probably forgot to do that this morning, there will be some further recalculations in this area because there are retrospective pay awards. So we've notified people they're going to defer benefit. We have then written out to them with the values of the deferred benefit on the information we've provided. The pay award has then happened retrospectively. Their final pay is increased. We need to go back and recalculate the benefits and write out to them. So that has added to our backlog. DWP request for information. It's one case. It was put to the bottom of the file. There's no benefits being paid, but it has been done. It's out. And lastly, update member details. These are adjustments to the record. Someone's changed their name, they've moved address, whatever. So there's no benefits to be paid. We've queried some of this. Some of the information didn't quite make sense with the employers. While we're going back, liaising with the employers, the clock's ticked down and it's run out of time. I think our target to meet our KPI is 100%. We're at 98.16. So it is just a few handful of cases. Just moving through to point 3. So I'm not going to go through every point. So stop me if there is something there that you want to discuss. Well, point 3, member and employer contact. We're still at head scratch.
Just moving back to point 2.
Yeah.
The total number of active members
Yeah.
differs between the 2 tables.
That's it. Which?
So you've got 26,328 in table 2.2 and 26,335 in table 2.1.
Okay, leave that with me.
I mean, it is a small point.
It is, but I'll find out why. I don't know.
It's in a document like this, they shouldn't be different.
See it. Right, leave that with me. I'll drop Joe or Claire an email. I'll clarify that. So point 3, member and employer contact. As I said, we're sort of a bit of still a head scratching moment. We did send out surveys, a smaller number got higher returns. They were manual, they were sorted manually. We've now, it's now sent by email. We can send out far more surveys, but we get very few back, 14 out of 734, 1.9%. So don't think is a very good measure of anything. We are still discussing a better way to do this. Can we email people after they phone us, after they email us? Can we put an auto email out so everybody gets it when they contact us? Can we identify those that have received their pensions, transfers, etc., and just target those? It's still being discussed. The reason we moved to sending emails was just it was a bit of a resource issue. There's so much work we needed to do. It didn't seem to be. It seemed to be easy to do it digitally, but it's not working. We're happy for input, by the way, from anybody on that. Employer training. We've carried out 5 webinars by our employer team, all received well, all recorded and put on the website for employers to go back and rewatch or watch at their leisure. Point 4 is IDRPs, or Internal Dispute Resolution Procedure. This is the 2-stage formal procedure for scheme members to raise a complaint. They are each stage assessed by someone independent of the case, and they can move from stage 1, stage 2 if they're still not happy, if the member is not happy with our outcome report, and then they can move to the pension officer after stage 2 if they're still not happy with the outcome. So stage 1, appeals against the fund. We've got no current appeals outstanding, so no work outstanding, but one was completed in this period. Member appealed against us allowing a transfer of benefits. Now, the reason for that is they'd left more than 5 years ago. They are entitled to a refund of their benefits, or refund of their contributions, I should say. 5 years expired, that refund must be paid. They are not entitled to anything else. So the appeal was turned down. Stage 1 appeals against scheme employers. There's no outstanding there. Stage 2 appeals, no new cases. And the one we have here is exactly the same. Somebody required or requested a transfer after 5 years. They're not entitled to it, so they received the refund contributions. In 4.2, we have our pension ombudsman cases. These are current and yet old cases. We can see from the dates 22 and 23. We didn't uphold anything from stage 1 and 2 simply because the first one, the member retired early and received a reduced pension. They complained that it should have been unreduced, but for it to be unreduced, it would have had to have been an ill health retirement, a retirement at normal age or above, or a retirement on the grounds of redundancy or efficiency. They voluntarily retired early, so therefore the reduction is a mandatory requirement of the scheme rules. So it hasn't been upheld. It's still with the pensions ombudsman. They've acknowledged they have it. We don't know when they'll respond. The other ombudsman case is they complained through tier of IDRP 1 and 2 that the employer did not permit ill health retirement. It was turned down. The employer was quite clear in their response that the member did not meet the criteria for an ill health pension. And again, we're waiting for a response from the ombudsman.
So can I just not that I mean to give you a breath. If I could may just, it's that it's 2.5 years.
I know.
The first one, from the member's perspective,
I know.
that he's been or she's been waiting for a response.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just
No, sorry,
sorry.
I mean, is that? I mean, it's the ombudsman's. It's in the ombudsman's court, but
yes,
it's a long time, isn't it, before the appeal?
yes, we have, and you'll know this. So for the board, at each stage, the admin authority has too much to respond, or if we can't, we must communicate with the member to say it's going to be late. When it gets to the ombudsman, there is nothing that I'm aware of that says they should respond within a short period of time or even a long period of time. I can't think of anything written that says they have to respond. There has been, the matter has been made worse because last summer they had a cyber attack, pension ombudsman. As I understand it, it affected their own internal systems and they were unable to deal with any of these complaints for a minimum of 3 months. It might have been nearer 6. I don't want to embellish it, but it was a significant amount of time. And the pension ombudsman now has its own backlogs. So that sort of makes me feel quite good that they've got backlogs. And we don't chase. And I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I don't know. George, if anyone else chases.
I don't think it's chase. This is not to. I mean, I've recently received a final notification on a case that was full.
So,
Yeah. So, yeah, they are gradually working through them, but it seems to be a bit of a sort of random numbers. But things get to.
I only make mention from a member's perspective. It's from a member's perspective. It's. Well, that's it. Isn't it? There's a. I'm not saying it's been with the ombudsman 2.5 years, but the appeals been.
yes.
30 months, haven't they?
No, I agree. And I'm surprised, as far as I'm not aware, that we'd be contacted by either of those members. Because I would, even if I just phoned up every couple of months and said, have you heard? But
I mean, especially the ill health, particularly, you think that from a health would be a little bit more, say, urgent. But anyway,
maybe that proves the point.
Yeah.
Criteria. Don't know. Anyway,
So
so
on the employer state bonds,
Yeah.
how would you have a complete record of those? They presumably they go straight to the employer, so you may not know that someone's like state want to be able to
to the best of
date
my-
for an academy trust or something.
Yeah, no, I get your point. I hadn't thought of it that way, because the best of my knowledge is that they all come via us. So we would pick those up for and on behalf of the employer of stage 1. So so if we flip it a bit more,
Not responding, but
So the process that the fund has is the IDRP says, please send your stage 1 appeal to West Yorkshire Pension Fund. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, right, okay.
but there is a point there, I suppose, that if they did contact the academy, the employer directly, and the academy does nothing, forwards nothing, or resolves it, and we wouldn't know, I suppose there is an element of risk there. But I would.
Yeah, but you've got a process that's supposed to be
Yeah.
captured. Okay.
Right, point 5, 5.1 is staffing. We have 6 senior pension officers, SPOs, vacancies in the service centre. Now, I think there's a bit over the page here at 5. Maybe not. We have had difficulty recruiting internally to a senior pensions officer. We have internal requirements that someone should be employed for 3 years, should have knowledge across the scheme and our processes, and has a qualification or is undertaking a qualification. We've exhausted all of those internal candidates and now find ourselves with these vacancies. So our policy at the moment is to recruit pensions officers, so more doers, training those up. As they're being trained up, the current pensions officers will be getting that experience, and in 6, 12, 18 months' time, they should then be able to be promoted into senior pension officer roles, which is key because they are the first roles to undertake checking of the processes that the officers complete. There are no vacancies in technical or the employer relation team, which is good. I've covered 5.2 broadly with cloud and the backlogs and manual calculations.
Just on 5.2, Matt,
Yeah,
how confident are you that the software supplier is going to actually Some, deliver something that works on time.
We, so that's confident, right? So Civica have delivered or are delivering all the necessary drops and calculations that we require. It is running through this month. Until they are fully tested and we're using them, on site, they've been poor on delivery. They haven't met it yet. And we are challenging them in certain areas. So I'm confident that they will get them to us, but until we're testing them, they now confident I am their new work.
There is a wider concern the LG community, Civic have prioritised dealing with the uniform services first, and that's resulted in some of the scheduled delivery dates bumping up against statutory deadlines.
Yes.
The process.
Yeah, we have had quite interesting conversations with them. There are no uncertain terms how we feel about their deliveries today and the issues that it is causing. Not in following up the gun. Yeah, and their lack of delivery on the fire scheme has caused us to report a breach of ABS and certainly held up our fines. And it is solely down to them at the moment. So I think by bringing this back in the next 4 meeting, those deliveries that have been tested, if they work with the users, and that will have some immediate effects on our bird benefits, and it should have an effect on some of those meetings as well. So you have to bring that back.
Yeah, no, I think just for the board to gain assurance that you've identified the risk, you're on top of it. I suppose the question follows on from that. If it doesn't work when it arrives, what's plan B with the deadline?
That's very difficult answer. It's like failing. I mean, we can't clearly, do more with the manual calculations and all manual calculations we do. We were slower than we process. I think, that's a question that we face. I can't really answer that. I'm not close enough to it. I am concerned, not concerned. Everybody is to be concerned. At the moment, we just get by with regards to the cloud. That's the way to answer that.
Is there a kind of a group pressure for UPM users that are putting on Civica, and probably a similar thing I imagine is happening with COVID? Because obviously they've got a bit of a duopoly going. There's another player in the market that's coming. How good they are, I don't know. Oh, true, okay. They're not very good.
Which one are we talking about?
But I just wondered is there any kind of organised approach across?
There has been a time since we've all been network safety growth. I think that happens in different. They've done with surveys or even the same deadlines to all of their clients at the same time. So they might be focused on one scheme or another. They may have even focused on one client or another. Let's just call it a new client, shall we? And they may have been able to deliver their services, but an existing one, their oldest client. So business went, so we would be their oldest client. And we were shut out of those developments for a 6-month period while they focused on these other clients. But arguably, they hadn't shut us out. Issues that we face now, we faced 6 months ago. So, yes, I am concerned. I'm happy to bring that back. I'm hoping it's going to be a positive update. Doesn't smell great either. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, okay. Probably going to annoy Joe. I mentioned the rebranding. As we talked about, for 10 years, as we know. It was talked at the last board, and Ewan took that to our joint advisory group. I think the word I used today was there wasn't support to push this through. I've used other words like empathy instead, but I have agreed to take this back to you and get an update because we feel that as a shared service, there should be a recognised branding for that service.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I have asked if we can have sight of what went to the joint advisory.
Yes, you do.
So
I have a note of that.
what, how it was requested. And the offer, I think, is for us as a fund to come and make representation to your JAG if required, because I think both us, Hounslow and Barnet are really very much on board with the idea that there should be an individual standalone brand for the shared service. So I think we can't take that pressure off.
What pushing back to?
Yeah.
Can I, sorry, I just add my moment bit with it. From what you say then, Joe, and I look at you, Matt, as well, that it's not just Lincolnshire who are putting pressure on people by saying that, or Yorkshire. I mean, I think I may say, secrets in the word shared service, isn't it? But it's not West Yorkshire, it's the shared group. But is that Barnet as well that they were keen to see a bit more clarity?
I think so. I mean, if just talking about Barnet, probably the most relaxed out of.
All right, okay.
But that doesn't mean to say that they're not interested. So I think collectively there was pressure on us to.
I only ask. I mean, I find it frustrating, you know, well, that when I get my pension statement from my banking, you know, and it says West, it's come from West York, so it's coming from Lincoln. So I see, and I'm assuming every other pensioner in Lincolnshire is West York, you know, when it goes in their bank. It's quite visible, that respect. And I'll leave it there. It's being really busy.
We have a new website, by the way. Coming to that, you're going to be something later on. We've had one internal audit transferring to the executive. Then we have the finance update. We are on course to maintain the current contribution to 1842 and the projected cost for next year at £20.14 per head. Now, I don't usually run through each week. It's not my area of expertise, finance. Broadly looking at some of these underspends are linked to staffing, recruitment, and the support, IT support of our staff. Should we ever be fully staffed, those costs would be met or possibly exceeded.
But sorry, Matt, I'm slightly confused by this.
Okay.
So you're underspending by something around 4%.
Right, I haven't got that out. But go on.
Yeah. So your base estimate for 24-25. So no, your base estimate for 24-25 was lower than what you think the final cost per member is going to come out by.
Yeah, that does.
So you're assuming membership is going to be less than you anticipated then?
That's my understanding, and then there is if there has been an overpayment, it's then paid back to the fund.
Right. So yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. There's also in the I believe there is a dispute on £117,000. I've asked for a bit more information. It is either a delivery that Civica have said that they've made, and we don't believe they have, or it's a development that hasn't really hit the mark. So we are contesting £117,000. We'll bring it up to speed on that later. Sheds, I think everything else. Point 6, just to mention, P-cells, or pension commensurate excess lump sum, when lifetime allowance taxation was removed, and that would be the maximum limit on the capital value of pension benefits before additional tax was paid. When that was removed, we thought that would make life easier. Our regulations are restrictive, and should a lump sum, a tax-free lump sum, exceed £268,275, any excess above that would be taxed at 40%. It's just a slight wrinkle in the regulations, although I should point out, since the changes in legislation, there hasn't been anybody that's had a lump sum of more than £268,275. And that is everything on the admin update. So if there are any more questions,
Any more? I think, Matt, before we move on to Stuart talking about the website, if in the next report you could sort of bring some more detailed information on the size of the backlog and the progress that's been made on addressing it. You know, it's encouraging to hear that you sort of knocked 57% of various aggregations on head,
Yeah.
but actually seeing information about, you know, we had this many in the backlog at March, this many at the end of June, this many at the end of September. I think that would be helpful and provide greater assurance to the board that things were progressing. I understand officers get that on a regular basis and have all sorts of charts and things, but
If I could just add to that, there has been ongoing debate about how you identify what is backlog, what is pending processes awaiting an employer response or a member response. And I think there's been some work going on in trying to understand. So I can honestly say we don't have a clear picture of backlogs in the management information that we get from.
yes.
And this is something that's been raised at shared service meetings a few times now, and looking at how can we have confidence in what is the backlog, where is it going, how is it being addressed. So we hear how the resourcing is being addressed, and we've seen improvements in active processes, pending processes, things going through more quickly, but there is still an issue in reporting and identifying backlog.
and someone needs to just make a decision that sort of arbitrarily says
Anything older than
anything older than a point in
Well,
time.
that's actually what we've been looking at. We've been looking at what we've called aged reports. Yeah, and then we initially took everything that was older than the 1st of January this year, just to see what was in there and what got knocked off. We then realised that was a little bit daft because, you know, arguably we could see the backlog reducing to zero by the end of 2024. We'll run a report at the end of 2024 and there'll still be this year's still in there because everything would have been prior to 24. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at resourcing in certain targeted areas like the deferred benefit setups. We are reminding our staff continuously that if you can't work a process of file for a genuine reason, the employer didn't give us the leaving date, for example, and you have to liaise with the employer. We can't do anything until then. So, you know, put that on hold for a week, put it for next Thursday. That means that it isn't counting down the days, you know, as a time that it was sitting there and we can't do it. So we have a little bit of that caught up. We've also, just for your understanding, done a little bit of housekeeping on our processes where we may have actually completed the piece of work, but the process attached to it is still outstanding, which drives me potty as a former administrator. And, you know, we could probably clear hundreds of our reporting backlogs off the system by going back and just clicking yes, done. So we've got all of this going on in the mix, which hopefully helps sort of, maybe if not clarify, it just sort of paints a picture of the various sort of areas to be looking at for you.
Right, Stuart.
Thank you.
Show the Wizzy new website.
Thank you very much. So I thought as an aid member as well, I'll just take one and put it down. Okay. That's what the old website looked like. There's good reasons why most people sat around here probably never saw it, including yourself, Jeff. I didn't look at the old. I printed 10. So when Elizabeth Bourne joined us years ago as the head of Project Comms and IT, one of the things she was very, very keen for us to do was to replace what was a pretty old website on pretty deprecated software. So she comes from a bit of a different background to how we've done sort of website development in the past at WYPF. And we'd had a web developer who was a sort of in good local government pension style, had learned the job going through the years. But he regrettably had retired, had been off on ill health with an illness that eventually led to his ill health retirement. So he was absent from the organisation when Elizabeth joined us. So we took a look at what we want to do, and she was very keen that we took a step back from what we had and actually went back to our members, customers, as she would probably say from a private sector background, and look at what do they actually want for a website, what do they like about what we offer, and then what would they like something to do in a new form. So we went out, we surveyed, we used our members who've signed up for the My Pension portal because we have their email address. So we reached out to all of those across all of our funds and firefighter shared service clients as well. About 65, 70,000, I think, at the time when we sent it in and said, what do you think of it? Here's a survey if you'd like to fill it in. And if you'd like to do some extra work with us, looking to try and develop it better, please put your hand up and say yes. So we ended up with lots of responses to that survey, and then a panel of people in this 3,000-ish sort of mark who said would be interested to do a focus group. So we set to work as a team internally, trying designing what we thought a new website looked like. And then we started testing that with members across all statuses, so active, pensioner, and across all of the shared service partner funds and fire authorities. And started to get some feedback from what they liked, didn't like, what they were looking for, and all those sorts of feedbacks, and trying to make some sort of tangible, empirical sort of research from it. Fed all that into what a spec looked like for a website, and then because the communications team at the time was effectively myself and one person, Andrew Butterfield, who's a copywriter and a graphic designer, essentially. We didn't have the in-house skills to do some of that build at the time. We then procured a third-party company called CSI, not Privacy Investigation, to do the technical build on a new piece of technology. So using Umbraco again, which we were previously using, albeit a very old version, and the current sort of long-term support version, which is Umbraco 10, to build a platform that we would then be able to build on. So worked through with them, again, took sort of little shots in time of that, fed that back into our panel and said, how does this look? Are we heading in the right direction? And eventually ended up at a design and build that is where we then landed during this year, which came out as a demo to the shared service management team, and then went live in September. So awfully backseat drive for Thomas, while he brings up on the screen for us. And I can then sort of talk through some of those principles and how we've applied them into the website.
Is this from the report?
It's just the website. So, do you have a?
No, I
I've
don't think Tom has been made aware. Sorry. You want to go into if you share your screen, once you're in there, share your screen, not Teams. So if you put in WYPF, then a new branding we come up with.
I have a comment there.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
That's the answer. That's it. Sharing screen. Side of that, some remote backseat driving. If I get Lisa to do it, see if she's paying attention. Fabulous. So that's the homepage. I'll face this way. I can see the screens behind me. So if you'd like to just sort of scroll down that screen, then we've created a new website that has to do some heavy lifting because we don't only do pensions for Lincoln Pension Fund, we do West Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, Hounslow, Barnet from the local government space, but we also do firefighter pension scheme for about 24 FRAs. And how do we sort of communicate those various journeys for members to find? And then things like give easy access to look at information about your fund if you're interested. So they were the sort of things we had to consider. So where we sort of landed on, if you'd like to go back up a little bit, the sort of first point you land on is the schemes there of whether I'm an LGPS member or a firefighter pension scheme member, and to let you explore the journey of the pension scheme that matters most to you. So let's click on I'm an LGPS member. And what we have in this area, apart from the very top header, which disappears when you scroll down, is as generic an experience in terms of funds as possible. We talk about the local government pension scheme and your fund or the funds in as much as possible so that you can find information about your pension, if you remember, that tells you the information you need without trying to force home that West Yorkshire Pension Fund identity at the time. Now, obviously, if there were ever a shared service identity, it would be very easy to drop in to this website because we just strip out some header elements and then you have that administration shared service piece there, which
Can I just ask, is there not the idea this is the admin shared service as opposed to the West Yorkshire Pension Fund website, which in my mind are two very different things? Why you couldn't have all the headings across the top? Or because, as I say, the issue is a member goes in there, the first thing they land on, the first thing they see is Orange WIPF, and it just reiterates to them, I'm in the West Yorkshire Pension Fund, alongside the email addresses to WIPF, etc. So I've fed this back numerous times, but if it's West Yorkshire Pension Fund's website, then I assume you have on there everything about the investments and everything else specific just to West Yorkshire, and then there should be a separate link to the shared service area, which is then no WIPF visible unless it's into the individual member streams.
I've just logged in to my pension thing and it's on that page, it's got all of the.
It does on that one,
Yeah,
yes, that's the member portal.
once we're into that space.
Yeah.
Part of it's sort of a restriction within the template of website we have, that top bar is somewhat really sort of limited in how many images, graphics you have there. And partly within my remit, my hands are quite tied.
I know, I will continue with the feedback.
And that's something I'm.
If there's something technical in that it's being posted on West Yorkshire, if that's the feedback, then that's the feedback. If there's a technical issue, we've been able to do that within the realm of, the space that you're working with. But we're asking if there is, I suppose.
At the minute, if we were to do that, I still don't know what we would call it. What would the web link be? What would that shared service pension?
Well, there would be a rebranded shared service like we
It would have
Peninsula Pension.
Shared pension services, in a sense, it doesn't matter. The partners need to agree that, don't they? But Joe's right. If you look at that homepage again, the news items at the bottom of that homepage start with a news story about an investment that West Yorkshire Pension Fund have made. Very good investment, very, very good news story, but no relevance at all to members of the Lincolnshire Pension Fund. And that there is a there are ways of having a shared service. There are shared services that are genuinely shared, which have their own identity and respect the identity of the individuals. And there are shared services where someone is doing to other people. I don't think the intention of this shared service is to be the latter.
Absolutely not.
That's what's the way this comes across is that.
I think it is, and it's on Facebook, on the other social medias, it's WIPF. And it's been a hobby horse for a decade for me. But at some point, I think it is really important for the sovereignty of the Lincolnshire Pension Fund, for our scheme members and our employers, because there are instances where they're picking wrong boxes. They're going into to do AVCs and they're thinking they're in the West Yorkshire Pension Fund. So, it does have, it's not just about wanting, ego for Lincolnshire. It is actually, there are impacts for our scheme members and our employers. Anyway, I'll jump off the soapbox.
What I would say, Stuart, is having sort of taken time to actually go through it and work through it, it's a far better site than the previous one. Clearly, a lot of work and testing the scheme members has gone into that, and it shows positive feedback as well as the.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if we park the brand point a bit, essentially the website's designed around 6 core journeys for members to explore about the pension scheme. But it quickly becomes apparent if you're trying to just shoehorn an entire pension scheme into those 6 journeys, that's sort of untenable because they would be hugely complex. So if Tom said you want to scroll them down, they're the sort of 6 journeys that you'll see there. And then underneath that, we've sort of created this. Thank you. What we've sort of called the LGPS Knowledge Hub, which is then a wrapper for everything else in there. So if you want to click into that, that has big articles about the more detailed parts of the scheme if you want to find out about transparent, but it also houses things like newsletters, events, and all those sorts of forms and guides, fact sheets, all of your downloads, that sort of thing. So that was the sort of simplified member experience that we did for members. And then we applied that same principle for both firefighters pension scheme and also for LGPS employers as well. So if you're an LGPS employer coming into the site, you have a very similar experience where you have that same sort of broken down journey-based experience. If you mind going back to the home page. If you come a bit down, we did try to make the shared service partners. That was sort of where we tried to sort of start to speak about that. So we wanted to sort of drop in somewhere like Lincolnshire, which is oddly the worst example of this in some ways, because Lincolnshire actually hosts all of your information within your Lincolnshire County Council site, don't you? So this is a space where we do have branding at the very top, which is Lincolnshire Pension Fund. We can set that on a page. So we've created somewhere that feels more Lincolnshire, whether or not you like hay bales and fields, like that. The rest. Joe gave us go on, it'll do. I don't think it's going to feel too strongly either way about it, I hope. But down there, so it then just sort of comes down, a bit of an introduction, which Joe very kindly sort of wrote for us based on a first attempt. And then signposting into Lincolnshire County Council's sort of pension fund microsite areas, where it dives off. So what we're going to sort of try and encourage employers to do is to use these sort of fund micro pages as the starting point of when they're signposting people to the website. At the very top, it says if you want to read about how the local government pension scheme works, you remember, click here, and it takes you into those journeys, and you don't ever have to necessarily interact with that homepage as well. Whether or not that's a success is perhaps already apparent in the past conversation we've had about the branding site. On good news, it's been very well received from members. We've had over 40,000 people interact with the website in the first 30 days of the site. So the technology is working, it's robust, apart from a completely unrelated system issue where it was down for 2 hours last week. It's working and it's receiving positive feedback. And it will change and grow iteratively now, but I think there's a need for Matt and I to go back and have a longer conversation around.
That's the first time I've seen it.
Is it really?
Yeah,
That's exciting.
I think it's. I've got a couple of thoughts, but I'll run those past them tomorrow. That looks good. Yeah, because I do tend to agree with everybody around the table. Maybe because for 3 years you've been telling me, and 7 years you've been telling people before that. But I don't think I ever had any barrier, did I? I didn't put up a fight, and so I get it. I do sympathise a little bit with Stuart. It's a really hard job to write something as large as this that comes in for not just the clients but the members. But having seen that, I've got a couple of thoughts I feed back, and I'll be feeding back to you in any way with Joe's remarks and things like that, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I've only heard positive things from the various meetings I've been at.
So, I've got really good, and it looks much more up to date. If you are a fund member, do you go in the bit where it says you're a member, or do you go into so I'm a full member of Lincolnshire Pension Fund, do I go into the Lincolnshire button or do I go into the member button? Because if there's a choice, can we not do the bit that says these are the funds and put that at the top? Rather than put at the top, are you a member or are you a firefighter? I presume you, answering that question, I suppose, to myself, you're catering for the fact that you're a fire authority administrator as well.
Another thing. So I don't think they should be on the same page, person, because I think there's a clear distinction between the shared service, and our FRA clients. They are clients. That's not a shared service. Yeah, we are delivering third-party admin. This is more of a shared service. We will have an input collaboration board, etc., etc. So, but there's a few other things, Stuart. But that, again, we've got tasks to do. That's brilliant. And
I suppose my question still stands though. Yeah. Where are you expected to navigate through, either as a member or as a member of the Lincolnshire Pension Fund?
It wouldn't really matter. So if you go up to the
do either.
Yeah, so if you interact with the Lincolnshire page, you'll come to this page, and then if you want to find out about the scheme, there's links here that say, "Oh, here's."
So you don't end up pressing the wrong button, and
you don't sort of go down a sort of a dead end.
Right.
So you'd still loop back into that scheme information.
If I can just say, I think it is a huge improvement. I think it's really good. I know there has been a lot of time and effort gone into it. So there are my niggles, but it is still hugely better. It's really bad grammar. Much better than it previously was. And I appreciate the distinction of the funds and our logos on there now. So it's kind of baby steps. We're on the way.
The good thing is that because of the nature of what a modern content management system looks like, there's an opportunity with perhaps senior management team, WYPF backing, to build and design something very different that's very easy to drop in and replace now. So we have some agility around what this looks like and what it works like, which we didn't have before.
Is there any plans to update when you do log in? Because that's not really changed, and it's also took off the ability to get an estimate on there. So before I've put in dates to see when I can retire. I can't do that now.
The model's not on there.
No.
We'll take that back. That would be.
It should be. It was when I was in recently.
There's no option for it on here.
If you go into membership details, you may find it's in there.
Yeah, it's
There
not,
is- there is-
it's not as easy to navigate as.
So there's a distinction here, that's Stuart, isn't there, while we talk about it? My pension portal is part of Civica's UPM offering, so it's unrelated to this website. However, Elizabeth keeps talking about our capability of producing our own portal.
There's an ongoing project which we report in monthly on to by Lisa to replace that my pension it's referred to with a bespoke built member portal that's divorced from Civica's front ends and just utilises our own API.
That would look far better, so you can access it from the website as all for your own logins. But what you would see, we would hope, would be that, or whatever that end up looking like in the, and then the corporate branding, whatever it is, would run all the way through.
Conscious of time. Are there any more questions? Okay, right. So we move on to the next item: temporary bank accounts.
Thank you. Right. So this is the report of temporary bank accounts. We've used these for about 3 decades, so prior to she joined us. And we use them for 2 reasons. The first, we touched upon it with our IDRPs and complaints. Once a member leaves the scheme and they have less than 2 years membership, they're entitled to a refund of their contributions. Those refunds should be paid within 5 years of that date. If it is not paid within 5 years of that date, it's paid later, then the member may experience additional tax charges at 40% and unauthorised payment. So to avoid the member having to pay an additional tax charge if or when they do claim their refund, we pay the benefits before the 5 years, or the refund before 5 years, into a bank account. It also discharges the fund's liability. It's easily accountable, doesn't include anything else, doesn't contain any other reporting accounts. It's a standalone liability to be paid. The other reason that we may use a bank account are for people we've lost trace of. We haven't been able to approach them when they've reached certain ages for payment of their benefits. The earliest age is 60, the normal age, the state pension age of the scheme. And of course, by the time they reach 75, we should pay the benefits. It's the last day that the benefits can remain unpaid in our regulations. If the member refuses to communicate with us and elect to receive their pension, we can't pay it. If we don't know if they where they live, we can't contact them to make that election. So what do we do? So again, to demonstrate that we have identified this as a liability to the fund, we open an account, we pay their benefits into the fund, and we pay it into that account on a monthly basis until we've managed to make contact with that member or we're notified that they have passed away. So even once these are in payment, we don't stop our work. We keep going back. We use tracing agencies, we implement mortality checks, NFI, TAS once, any agency that we can to try and find these people anywhere on the globe, so that we can then contact them and ask them to make their election. Of course, some of them live on our doorstep. We know exactly where they live, and for one reason or another, they will not complete the election forms. There is one member in the Lincolnshire Pension Fund. We can communicate with her daughter, but the lady herself has anxiety issues and will not communicate with us to receive payment of her pension, which is a real shame. And for other people, they may be in receipt of means-tested benefits and will not elect to have their pension paid because they don't want to have the value of their means-tested state benefits eroded or suspended. So that leaves us with a bit of an issue that we have to keep paying these. And in the report, we'll see that we have opened 18 deposit accounts for pensioners or beneficiaries. And the total amount in those accounts is £54,431. The good news is we have identified some people this year. There were originally 23 accounts, so it's reduced by 5, and the value has reduced from £76,461. It sounds like quite a bit of money there. To put things in context, that is 18 scheme members in 27,000 pensioner members. But it's still a bit of a sticking point. For the refunds, that's going in the other way, because there were 680 unclaimed refunds. There's now 735. The amount held in the account is now 128,000, rising from 111. And the further we get away from 2014 and the start of these regulations, the more 5-year periods are going to expire and more accounts are going to be opened. Unless or until the regulations have changed, and by a technical group, they are lobbying for these regulations to be amended. But even 2 weeks ago, talking to MHCLG, they were asking, do we want this as a priority? And we're sitting there going, yes, we do.
The admin rates might not be a priority for other reasons.
Yes.
Questions on this?
All I was going to ask, Matt, if I may, is there a difference between the unclaimed refunds and the frozen refunds? You could have someone who only had an entitlement to a refund and said, but I don't want you to pay it because I might be coming back into employment.
But it doesn't that expire? I have to check this actually, David, but I think that still has the 5-year limit on it.
Does it?
Because it's a refund. So that would be included in these.
These are the ones that are just not claiming, rather than saying, I know I've only got a refund, but can you keep it for me?
Yes, but I think a refund. I'll check that for you. It's an interesting point, but I think they are one of the same because the 5-year rule applies.
Right.
That's my understanding. Sometimes get it wrong.
Funds publish figures on funds that don't generate bank accounts, or certainly I would imagine, I'm pretty sure Lincolnshire's figure for frozen refunds is significantly bigger than 735.
No, the undecided, that's the undecided, isn't it? Is that the undecided?
When you've got undecided to
Undecided and frozen refunds plus it.
Well,
I mean, maybe David, they're not.
Yeah.
It could be that they're not sitting as identified.
all I was going to say is that you've still got another group, if you're not careful, that are genuinely saying, I don't want, and you've got to keep in touch with.
I mean, not all funds deal with this in this way, man. And I have to say that this raises a question: is it not the responsibility of the scheme member to claim their benefits or their refund? And you're continuing to make attempts to contact them and pay it.
Yeah.
So, but you're creating a further significant administrative task instead of financial controls and accountabilities that clearly have a cost, even if we can't put a number to it.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a cost. I mean, I think in the bigger picture, the cost is really small. I choose my words carefully. I spoke to everybody concerned within West Yorkshire about this because I can't think of another group. It's not just West Yorkshire now; it's the shared partnership that do this in the country. And I understand why it is done, and it is done for the right reasons. You know, addressing liability, ring fencing the money, etc., etc. There are people out there, are former colleagues, scheme members who really do need to have this pension paid. I mean, if we could just get through that lady with anxiety, there's a significant amount of money we could pay her. So it's all for the right reasons. I have had a bit of a breakthrough with my superiors in so much as that we have created another post within West Yorkshire. Could you tell me the advert now? So we are now going to apply our own legal professional, which would be good news for the shared service. Nothing will get bogged down in Bradford's legal department. This will be one of the first things people to maybe tasked with. So for the sake of shooting myself in the foot, I'll identify what I consider maybe to be a couple of issues. When those benefits are put into payment in that deposit fund, we are making an election on behalf of the member. We are making an election for the lump sum to be paid, and we're assuming their tax position. Should that person ever walk out of the woods, we don't know if those two positions are correct, and I think we are at risk of an IDRP, and I don't think we would win it. The risk is minute, really minute, but they exist. The bigger issue, which is the one that got my superior's attention, is how long do we keep paying a pension to people? Because people don't live forever, and for most of these, many of these, we don't know where they are. So we don't know if they're alive. Now, I came up with some really great ideas, like we should get our actuary to find out the average life expectancy of a Lincolnshire pension member, and maybe we should stop it then. So the position as it is at the moment, and I'm being completely honest with you, is when this person starts, this will be pushed on their desk and say, give us a legal opinion. And then I think it will come back here. If you want to support or not my approach to this, that's great. But that's how I see the issues with this. We are doing something out of regulation, but for the right reasons, in my opinion.
Yeah, no one can dispute it's for the right reason.
It seems to be, from my perspective, Matt, it's an ever increasing number.
The 5-year refunds, obviously that's slightly different. Once it's paid in, it's paid in. And I'm hoping when they do get round to the scheme regulations, we could then know what to do with this whatever that money was now, 111,000 or whatever it was, 128,000. We could almost then reinvest that back into the fund. That would be great, because we might not then have the issue of the 5-year deadline and members having to pay unauthorised payment tax on a late payment of a refund. So that might be good news. So you can argue that that's a short-term thing, even though it's going up and it's the big number. That doesn't bother me so much as the pensioner accounts, for the reasons that I've outlined. I don't know what you think about that, George. I mean,
I mean, effectively, you are acting as a trustee.
Yeah.
And there's no legal trustee framework around it. I wouldn't for a moment suggest that you were doing things that weren't in the best interests of the individual.
Yeah.
But as you say, if an IDRP was put in on one of these, because you do not know the individual circumstances in a particular case when you make those elections, you can have a real problem defending it.
I don't think it is defensible, because the election, as far as I'm aware, is if they have a standard lump sum, an automatic standard lump sum, that's what that election becomes. Of course, if they ever walked out of the woods, I might say, no, I want to. Yeah. But just going back to the third, we've been doing this for 30 years, and this is quite key. So this should be admitted. We have never had a challenge.
Yeah.
As I said, the risk is small, but the risk is there. But as we move further away from the position of payment on these accounts, whether 18 of 27,000, I think we need that legal opinion to know, should we be paying them? And if not, should we stop them? And if so, when? I mean, we could always say for new ones coming up to retirement age that we could say, well, we're not going to pay those. The biggest headache of those we've already made that decision.
Yes. Okay. Anything else on that? No. With people's agreement, I'm going to swap items 7 and 8 because I know Rash needs to get away. So we'll deal with the annual report and accounts next time. Everybody's happy with that. Briefly.
I am indeed. So the report today brings to the board the draft annual report for 2024, and the external auditor will present their audit completion report. Pension Fund Annual Report 2024 is attached to the report at Appendix A. And as far as possible, this has been compiled to comply with the new guidance that was received from the Scheme Advisory Board earlier in the year. You might remember from previous meetings that guidance applies for annual reports from 2025. But wherever possible, planners were asked if they could comply with that new guidance. And wherever possible, that has been done. One area where further work is required for full compliance is around the administration reporting, and we'll work with West Yorkshire over the course of the year to ensure that all the information that's required for that is available for inclusion in the 2025 annual report. Paragraphs 1.3 and 1.4 set out the changes which have been made to the financial statements, which are included within the annual report over the summer period. The most significant of those changes relates to updated private market valuations as at 31st of March. And this has given an increase in value of these assets of just over £7 million. A copy of the external auditor's report is attached at Appendix B, and I'll now hand over to KPMG to take you through some of the detail of that.
Thank you. Just my computer crashes, but I'll get there. So this report, this report is our report to those charged with governance. It helps us discharge our responsibilities under the legislation, under auditing standards and various ethical standards. Page 4 of the report has outstanding matters section, so that's on page 232 of the pack. In there was this report was obviously written a couple of weeks ago. A couple of those areas are now knocked off. The query and cache has disappeared. The work around the material post-close journals testing has now been completed. More queries arising from my review have been resolved with or reviewed all material aspects of the file. It is an iterative process and continues to the end because there's some screens we need to click through at the end as you go to sign off the work, but we're getting there. And then it's just the things you'd expect at the end. In the case of yourselves, ensuring there's nothing that comes out of the county council's pension fund that makes me scratch my head and think, oh, is that something I need to think about for the pension fund? Nothing occurring at the moment. Getting signed management representation letter, signed statements, and then I'll be able to finalise our audit report and issue a clean audit opinion on them. In terms of our approach, which we set out at the pension board earlier this year in terms of the risks and the materiality, there has been no changes to the risk that we identified and any changes to our materiality level. The risks are there on page 5 or 233 of the pack. Colleague Mill's going to go over those, and then you'll pass back to me for the appendices. In terms of where we are on the audit, really pleasing where we are for a first-year audit. So I think, I want to take this opportunity to put on record our thanks to the finance staff. So we wouldn't get here if we didn't have a corporate finance staff. There's some finance staff throughout the country that can be uncooperative, or it's not as easy as work with, or there can be issues that arise, but that's absolutely not the case here. So I'll pass over to my colleague Mill, who'll go over the risks, and then we'll return to me for a bit of detail around other matters and appendices. I can get to that page in my report.
Thanks a lot, Rash. So as Rash mentioned, there has been no change in our risk identification and assessment. As mentioned on page 233, at planning, we identified a significant risk with the override of controls, which is covered on pages 234 and 235. Test performed included completeness of journal population and assessment of high-risk journals. No issues were noted with respect of both. We have not identified any suspected or any incidents of management override. As previously communicated, we have raised a control deficiency on segregation of duties for posting and reviewing of journal assessments. Investment completeness existence.
Sorry, we should just, for completeness, say, as a result of that, we
altered our audit procedures, did some additional work. We did some work around journals and got entirely comfortable. So there's a control deficiency, which isn't unusual for an organisation of your for a county council to use county council system. County council and yourselves believe you've got other mitigating controls in place. We don't necessarily test those because we design our own procedures to get assurance, and we're comfortable that there's no issues arising as a result of that, identifying that control deficiency. But because it is linked to management override, which is a significant risk, I have to mention that. I have to draw it out to those charged with governance as per the auditing standards. And if all the facts are the same on the ground again, I'll have to do that next year.
Investment completeness, existence, accuracy, and valuation was identified as another audit risk, which are covered from pages 236 to 240. We did obtain confirmations directly from fund managers and custodians. No issues were noted. As Claire mentioned, the update on valuation from the last set of accounts. We obtained the confirmations for those latest ones as well, and no issues were noted on most testing. For testing valuations of level 1 and level 2 investments, we engaged our internal valuation specialists and do not note any deviations outside the range. Similarly, for testing valuations for level 3 pooled investment vehicles, we assess the reliability of unaudited NAV statement by comparing audited and unaudited results, and no issues were noted at the time of testing. For completeness, existence, and accuracy of cash balances, that is covered on pages 243 and 244. We obtained direct bank confirmation, do not note any issues around it. At the time of issuing these results, we had an open query on classification of cash held with administrators. This has, however, been now resolved based on responses by officers. The other audit risk was also assessed on completeness, existence, and accuracy of contributions into the fund and benefits paid by the fund. This is on pages 241, 242, 245, and 246. We performed test of details and analytical procedures on these balances. No issues were noted on those as well. We also tested the disclosure of actuarial position of fund in the financial statement by assistance of our own actuarial specialist, which is covered on pages 247 and 248. The key assumptions, discount rate, mortality, and inflation applied for calculation of actuarial position are noted to be within our reasonable range. We do not note any issues with the competence, capability, and objectivity of Barnett Whittingham, the funds actually. With the council audit team, we tested the migration of data as well from old to new general ledger system as at 1st of April 2023. No material differences were noted in the closing balance as per old ledger system and opening balance as per new ledger system. Summary of our testing results on this piece is covered on page 250.
And just return to me in terms of other matters, I am required to confirm our independence, which there's a detailed appendices on independence for on 251. You can see I can make that statement. We do flag for completeness our relationship with Board of Course, where we're the external auditors, and there's a bit of associated work we do that. That's not non-audit work for you. It's just for completeness. I think it's appropriate to raise that with yourselves. I note regarding audit fees, so the audit fee as per the scale fees set by PSA. And then we have agreed one fee variation in respect to ISA 315, which we signalled in the audit. At the time of reporting, that hadn't been approved by PSA. Subsequently has been approved by PSA. In future years, a fee element of that for ISA 315 will be baked into your 24-25 fees. Or I think that's going through PSA consultation with bodies at the moment. And I also expect a future fee variation for the work around the data migration. We're just in the process of finalising the work that we've done around that at the council as well. Because we've done things in the most efficient way, i.e. rather than do things twice separately by two different teams, we've used the same team to do things once. So we'll be identifying that and raising that with officers and bringing that to a future meeting. There's a statement there regarding the quality and timeliness of information provided and prepared by management of those for charge of governance. And as I said earlier, absolutely no concerns with that. The appendices, I've communicated everything I need to that I'm required. Days for completeness, we do identify the corrected audit misstatement, which was mentioned earlier, and there's an appendix on the control deficiency, which we talked about as well. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
I mean, clearly, getting to this stage, given the current external audit environment, at this particular point in time, is credit to all involved, both on finance side and the auditors. Well done to all around. And particularly to complete an annual report, because personal experience complying with the new annual report guidance is not it's not easy, and I imagine much midnight order was burnt in order to get. Thank you very much.
Actually, if I could just say, we've got here, we obviously dot the I's, cross the T's and get a line. I think we'll still be doing a debrief exercise. I think it's important because inevitably things that you'll want us to do differently, the tweaks that we might want to suggest as well. So we'll have that exercise as we get into planning for next year as well.
Is Lincolnshire Pension Fund, are we ahead of the other funds? Is that, or are we?
I don't know, we have statutory deadline publishing our annual reports by the 1st of December. And I think generally most of the LGPS funds do that, with or without an auditor's opinion, depending on what's happening with their administering authority. But hopefully we will be in a position to be able to publish it, looking hopefully, with the auditor's opinion by that.
So we are to timetable, and it's, I mean, I do recall last year we had a few issues, didn't we? Not necessarily the full.
From the fund's perspective, we've always
made it, haven't we? So it's looking the same again. This that's very good.
It's fair to say most of the local authority accounts, with all of it, is interactive.
We've always around pensions in local authority accounts as opposed to the pension based.
Pension liabilities accounted in the local authority accounts,
Yes.
not the pension funds themselves. I think we are in a better place than most county councils. And obviously the pension fund sign off the audit is tied in with the LCC accounts. I think it's been really good. We've had a really good first year in KPMG. It's obviously a big task changing your auditors as well, so they've had extra work to do this year. But it's been, I think we've got some really great people at LCC in the pension fund team and in the finance team that work really well with the auditors, and hopefully it's been a fairly, choose my words carefully now, a fairly smooth process, albeit any kind of audit's challenging, but the government have issued new backstop arrangements for audited accounts, which hopefully will be upfront with them anyway. So
yeah, so I mean, effectively, the update, the statutory instrument that went through Parliament sets the new deadline, because the backstop is the deadline, is the 28th of February 25 for this set of accounts. It sets a audited deadline. It sets it the same day or the 27th of February the year after, then moves to the end of January, then it gradually gets to the end of November or whatever the last working day is in November for the next 2 years. So there's a lot of noise around the local audit, in local audits in terms of local authority audits and delays. I think that noise will increase because you're subject to the NAO code going through. You will see a whole range of audits backstopped and being brought up to speed. But that will be by issuing backstop disclaimed audit opinions where the auditor is offering no assurance.
And we're not in that place. We've got all our previous accounts that are audited.
I mean, my understanding, I only make mention again, just Lincolnshire Pension Fund and look at claim in the UGM. We've always, well, forward, we've been there, haven't we? Even if county council accounts have
Yeah, the annual
been
report.
slightly on in the slower lane. So that's good to hear.
Right, thank you very much. Right, we move back to item 7, risk register and for review.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, this is the annual review of the risk register and the risk management policy. There haven't been any changes to the risk management policy, which is attached to Appendix A. And after the full review that we did in 2022 on the risk register at Appendix B, there haven't been any changes in the format of the risk register. We do bring quarterly any changes or additions in the update papers, both the committee and the board. And we have added 2 new risks since the last meeting. Paragraph 4 sets out the risks across each of the areas of governance, investments and funding, operational and people. And both the new risks are in the governance area. The first one being at G3. This concerns any changes imposed by government on the structure of pools or funds. We've given this limited assurance due to the current uncertainty of the outcome of the pensions investment review. However, as a fund, we've been actively involved along with our partner funds at Border to Coast itself and other stakeholders to feed into hopefully the pensions review and shape the outcome of it wherever possible. The second risk that we've added is at G4. This is one that's mentioned within TPR's general code as a risk that should be understood. So this is on the fund's relationship with the administering authority, where potential conflicts of interest need to be recognised and managed. We've given this substantial assurance. So there's a clear understanding of the role and responsibilities of the administering authority in its role as scheme manager and a good relationship between the pension fund and the senior officers on the administering authority side. I don't plan on going through each risk, but I will happily take any questions. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions?
Sorry if I'm.
Go on, Dan.
Sorry, I don't mean to go it be me all the time. I comment only, and it was raised by Chairman of the Pension Committee. Not repeating this. P1 for me, or it says P1 is. I'm a bit nervous on that risk where loss of key staff and knowledge and skills. I do wonder at the time, and I make this statement in that there are key staff in the Lincolnshire Fund that are and would be difficult to replace. I pick on the chairman, not pick on Councillor Spengle, who's now can't be the chair of the pension committee, but I mean he's quite a key element of the pension committee. But similarly, here with his, if I look at the officers, I mean you two as well. Are you content, if I may ask, that risk is being addressed?
It's very interesting that you pulled in committee there, because actually we hadn't thought about key staff as being our committee members.
Well,
This is being looked at in the sense of staff in the pensions team within LCC, staff in the administration team at West Yorkshire. On the committee front, we may get a brand new committee next year. Councillor Strengle may not be back. So that is just something that we manage at every election cycle or in between election cycles when membership changes. In terms of within our team, it's a risk that it's very difficult we cannot fully mitigate it because we can't have a cast of thousands in the team. We can't have people waiting by. We do have a succession plan. We've brought 2 new members we've got 2 new positions in the team, one of which is appointed to, one of which we will appoint to in the next 18 months, 2 years perhaps. So we are doing the best we can in a small team. The way the team works in the roles are across the breadth of the skill set required to manage the fund, rather than having a fund accountant, an investment manager, etc. So that assists in ensuring that that knowledge is shared, not just sitting with one person. That's already covered some of the issues with the resourcing at West Yorkshire, but given that there's 200 odd staff there, it's a bit easier to ensure that that knowledge is shared.
Yes.
But I think it's one of those things that within any small team, and in particular in a very technical and specialist team, it's a risk that you can never fully mitigate. So it's just about managing it and being aware and saying we have some succession plans in place, but don't let Claire and I travel together is probably best advice.
I made that, it's not, I'm not raising it for, as I say, I look, from my perspective, I look to what knowledge you have both. And again, I do pick Councillor Stringer as well as key to someone looking at the pension committee, because he's very knowledgeable as well. He plays a key role, I think, I know he isn't the chair now, but that's because of other issues, isn't it? And I only raise it because I can, I can see a bit of a risk there, but it's difficult to manage. I fully understand.
Probably worth noting that Councillor Stringle wasn't a member during the previous administration. Was it long before? I think
He's been in since 2017. Back to that, he wasn't in. Yes.
so. We get that check.
Oh, you do, yeah.
I think I don't. We've spoken before about Sitford kind of widening some of their syllabus around pensions.
Yeah, one of the things that SIPFA have said that they will do is expand their syllabus. Thank you. You did just say that. Their syllabus, because there are Section 151s that are coming in with SIPFA qualification without any real prior knowledge or understanding of how the pension fund works, and then they are there as a scheme manager. Right. So that is supposed to be, I don't know if it's in the syllabus at the moment, but has been talk that will be introduced. One of the things that might help assist is fund consolidation, or one of the benefits of pooling has been that resilience across. We now have 10 other partner funds that we work very closely with, where potentially resources can be shared and used, and we're looking at how we can better use our knowledge across all the partner funds more effectively. So there are some of these things that could mitigate if there were a period, for example, were I to retire next July. If there was a gap that needed filling. So I think the relationships that pooling have brought us have been a real benefit in being able to perhaps provide that little bit of additional resilience. But as I say, I think the same within any team anywhere where it's a small team, it's a really specialist and technical subject area. It's very difficult to, you can never fully remove that key person risk. But we recognise it and we're trying to manage it as best we can.
You do. I mean, it's even though I say it's not being addressed, it's there. You are aware and considering what might.
So we have the controls that are in place that are listed in the column.
I think the important assurance is it's one of the things that's on Michelle's list of things that keep me worried.
It's worried me because I know July's a birthday. Yeah, so it's something that we talk about. Yeah.
I mean, I got one question. It's about the risk around training, and particularly members. Now, clearly, there is, as you said, a regular churn of members, and we're coming up to the point at which, for this pensions committee, there's likely to be a particular churn in members. But what is it that's going to have to happen for you to be able to get that risk down to the target level?
It's really difficult because we offer and prepare a lot of training. I think, if I can be blunt, I think the issue is just the governance of it, in how committees are selected, in the time that is required of committee members to actually have the training, keep up to date on it. It's such a complex area. It's unlike most other committees of the council. I think the good governance review, when that comes out, when that guidance comes out, and there is a clear mandatory steer on training that has to be done, that will assist us. We have a training policy. We've had one for years. We have mandatory training that sits within there that they agree to do, but they do not all do it. We are planning ahead already. We've already got a day agreed with our democratic services team that we will do a full day with the new committee once they know who they are. We will do training before the committees are put in place to an overview to explain what is required if you come on the pensions committee. But I think it's just a really difficult committee to get people to choose to come on to be engaged and to have the time to do all the training that is required. So we've created the manual that has all the induction training slides that we do. We use Lola for the online system. We've even sat through 2 mornings of watching all the Lola videos so that the committee can do it with us because they're unable to find the time outside of that. We offer all the training courses that come through, all attendance at conferences and seminars. It's kind of that you can lead a horse to.
So the reality is you've got the framework in place. You've done. So it's going to take some sort of external oomph from somewhere.
Yes.
And I think that's fine, because I suspect that's the case in virtually every LGPS fund in the country.
I think you're the challenge, which you're probably getting a sense of this morning, is there's an expectation of people understanding the decisions that they're making, but they're also doing that on the backdrop of they feel their decision-making abilities are diminished.
Yes.
I don't think they are. The strategy is clearly important, but that's a
return comes from the strategic asset allocation.
It's their perception.
Yes, I mean,
yes. So any offers or ideas as to how we can improve our training, or we can get people to come to it, is always welcome. We have fed back to Hyman's on the Lola side, because I don't personally think it is the most engaging of training. We need something that's interactive, that keeps them engaged. So we've had words with Hyman's about what they might do to reflect that in future updates on the training.
Yeah, on the training members, I made the point of that's it from my perspective. It helps if I can physically attend training, because I can have to block off a morning or a day or whatever. Left to my own devices, as both the county and the district councillor, there are times literally when other things just come up, and in the best way in the world, you say, "Oh, I'm going to look at that moment training." Something else comes up, a constituent will ring you with something all of a sudden. That day's gone, and then it's difficult. So I think there's a lot of mileage, Joe. In certainly, I mean, I did miss the second of the local sessions, but I found that really, really useful, because it meant for myself I could block out that morning and come and do the training without any sort of interference, as it were, from outside.
I think we've tried to be clearer in the terms of reference around the committee as well about what the expectations are. So there's maybe.
Yes, there's a new constitution update coming out, and we've moved training right to the very top of the expectations of within that role.
Anything else? We'll move on to the pensions dashboard. Matt.
Thank you.
More good news.
No. Yeah. Okay, so this definitely isn't my area of expertise, and Elizabeth Border, head of IT, wrote this. So I will just deliver this in summary, and then I might have, if we're not, some stuff that not something we can minister, but if I give you a bit more of what we're up to. So just to explain to everybody, the pension dashboard, this is big ticket item for the government. They want pension savers, not just this public sector, but right across employment, to access their pension funds. They believe that adults in employment at the moment may have 11 different funds in their career or their working lifetime, and there are at any time over £26 billion worth of pensions and assets that are lost or unclaimed. Obviously, from the government's point of view, if they're unclaimed, then our members might be claiming some of those mean-tested benefits I mentioned earlier. So there's definitely an interest for people to receive pension and definite a benefit for the government from having as well. There's going to be a dashboard, which is a digital online platform where anybody that has a pension or thinks they has a pension can log on and see if they actually do, who that pension scheme is with, who the administrators are, maybe even former employers and even current balances. It hasn't gone live yet. From the public sector, it is October next year, 12 months from now. From the private sector, there are schemes that are going earlier and as early as the spring. There has been delays because of DWP's capacity to deliver this on time. And from what we understand, there's probably going to be some further changes and amendments to the legislation and the implementation as the private sector schemes deliver. But in essence, what we need to do is by October is to provide a, let's just call it a copy of the annual benefit statement for every single member on this platform. And someone who thinks they've got a statement will log in, they will provide certain matching criteria. If that meets or matches the information that we hold, they will be let through the door and they can see Lincolnshire Pension Fund, Administrator of West Yorkshire, 31st of March 2025, values of their benefits, pension and lump sum. They would then have contact details. They don't know who they will be, whether they will be just West Yorkshire or they will be Lincolnshire's, probably not Lincolnshire's, but they might be, they don't know. And if they have ABCs, that information will be there, additional voluntary contributions, and they're run by Prudential Scottish Widows or who else do you have?
Just Prudential.
Just Prudential, brilliant, that makes it easier. Those information will be there as well. Then they can come through to West Yorkshire. We'll be able to confirm who they are. We can then direct them back to the portal and then they can carry on as if they were a normal scheme member. We've reconnected, perhaps put their new address details in because they've gone away before, etc., etc. So if we were all lost, it's all there. I should say that the information that's going to be put on this dashboard will be active members. We don't see that being an issue. Most active members have provided accurate data to us, and deferred members, but not pensioners, because it's assumed that information is provided. We know who they are and they're receiving payment. So it won't help with our bank accounts. And those entitled to a refund are not deemed to have an entitlement to a pension benefit, so they won't be included either. We have a provider in place called Bravura. That's an ISP provider, integrated service provider. And there, as I understand it, the security to our servers. We retain the data on our servers. The member logs into this national dashboard. They put all the criteria in. It hits the security wall of Bravura. The data matches, we let them in. The data doesn't match, we won't let them in. So we're making sure we hit all the data security requirements. We are going to have a challenge to make sure all that information is available this spring. Elizabeth is talking about early month 12 returns because she thinks it's going to take us a while to get the data on, tested, verified, ready for October. I think that might change, but that's the message at the moment, is all the information for month 12 by the end of April. I'm not sure how that sits with Lincolnshire, with some of our other clients. That's a challenge, but I think that's a movable feast personally. It has added to some of your costs per member. You can see at point 3 here that the costs that we've been charged is up to 900,000 over a 3-year period to get this in alongside McLeod. I think as it was picked up at committee this morning, this is an awful lot of work in the short term because we need to make sure that the data is absolutely accurate We need to do all the work to test. We need to get the information. That's the test our data, then the information on the dashboard and test that. And then we need to be in a position to handle any additional queries, members contacting us, members asking for estimates, those that are of a retirement age, they find their lost poplar, want it paid straight away, all that sort of stuff. So there is going to be a challenge on resource. Now, data did crop up, so I don't know. We haven't got anybody, external members of the public.
Recording.
We are recording. So there are a couple of things that I could add if you wanted to go into.
I think that gives us enough of a picture.
Is it you're okay with that? Because he wants to do some of the data numbers, so
Yeah.
quite happy to stop there.
Could you clarify paragraph 2.7, please? Particular, the last sentence
The last sentence, 2.7.
around the ABCs.
Right. I think that's a little bit of a red herring. ABCs weren't considered to be an issue when the dashboard was thought of when we had the first discussion. In other words, we're putting our information on there and the ABC providers, they'll put it on another dashboard or they'll put it on our one. The reality is wholly different. First of all, some ABC providers said, we can't access the dashboard. We'll give you the information to put on. Others said, no, we'll access your information or your dashboard and we'll put it alongside it. And then as we drilled down through that information, we realised that they weren't using the same scheme years. The date wouldn't have been 31st of March every year. There's no consistency between when that information was published and the values, and the members really wouldn't have known. So we've had to do quite a bit of work with all ABC providers. You're just Prudential, which is great. They've agreed that all their information that they will provide will be the same scheme year as ours. So it's the 31st of March. So if someone has an ABC with Prudential and they have a Lincolnshire benefit, they'll see their standard lump sum if they're entitled to it, their standard pension and the ABC value all dated the 31st of March. The queries for ABCs can come straight to us and then we can facilitate them through to Prudential. Or if Prudential's information is there, it can go straight to Prudential and they will deal with it. That last bit, I think, needs to be ironed out.
So the reality is that Linkage Pension Fund or any LGPS fund has to provide the front end for their ABC providers.
Yes. Yes.
Which makes life interesting.
Well, and that just hadn't been considered. Prudential were one of the problems we have with Prudential. They were actually one of the better ones for the end.
Any other questions on this? So we're just happy to note it as ultimately a positive development, but an enormous pain barrier to get through in the meantime. Right. Internal audit assurance. Are you introducing this, Joe?
Yeah,
just introduce
very briefly, yes. So this is just introducing paper that Claire Goodenough, our head of internal audit, welcome Claire, is going to present, just setting out the internal audit approach to gaining assurance on the management of the pension fund. I will say no more. I will hand over to you, Claire. Thank you very much, Jane.
So this assurance report is an independent review of first and second line assurances currently in place for board's consideration. An independent assessment of administration processes and procedures is also undertaken annually by Bradford Metropolitan District Council, which provides that additional third line of assurance. In your pack, page 271 provides details of the internal audit risk-based approach that we take at council and how we place reliance upon other people's assurance provision. And pages 272 and 273 shares the internal audit activity that's taken place between April 23 and current year now, which has relevant aspects from our internal control framework and from our governance framework. It's probably worth adding the revised annual governance statement now includes an assessment of council-wide governance processes, and that's assessed against the SIPA code of good practice principles and their framework, and pension governance included in that formal annual review. For 23-24, the annual governance statement did not identify any areas of improvement that related to pension governance practices. I'm very happy to take any questions on the report.
So going back to the annual governance statement, so if no areas are identified for improvement, are you able to draw a positive conclusion in terms of the fund's control environment?
So from the governance, if it's purely looking
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
governance aspects, from the governance aspects, every aspect that had conformance wasn't included because it was conforming. The areas for improvement were areas that didn't display full conformity.
Right.
Nothing
Okay.
to do with governance for the audit provision.
Yeah, although adequate public financial management is one of the domains, isn't it? So whatever they've renamed it, so that would clearly apply to this. So, I mean, this is helpful in the sense that it summarises all the areas where assurance is available. What it doesn't do, as far as certainly I haven't read it, if I've missed it, my apologies, is draw a conclusion.
No, it's not an assurance piece of work, as in we give an assurance opinion. It's a review of the assurance that's available for the committee. So when we do our review across the council for the areas that are for the higher risk or strategically objective based risks to include in the audit plan, that comes from our risk assessment. It details the risk assessment on page 271, I think.
Yeah.
That identifies the level of assurance piece of work that we give, where we would give an opinion against each of those assignment areas that we deliver against. This isn't that. This is a review of the assurance that is available to you.
So the only way we are going to receive an assurance opinion is if the risk-based planning process identifies that there is something in the pension fund that requires looking at, which, given the relative risks and an overall sound level of control, might be once in a blue moon.
I'd probably say once maybe every 5 years rather than once in a blue moon, because it will come round as part of the natural key control testing.
Right, okay.
In a 5-year cycle. So it was last looked at in, I think it was reported at the beginning of 23, April 23. So the latest you'll be looking at would be 28. Unless there was something that
Yes.
the Deputy 151 or the 151 said actually was a concern, or we had a significant change, not to scare anybody, but referring back to Joe's comment of, if Joe decided to leave, that would be a significant risk factor, which would.
Okay, but the fund's going to change its custodian next year. Is that something that would trigger some internal audit work?
I think from the, I'd need to look into it in a little bit more detail, but I think from the perspective of the assurances you get, it would be something that we would need to look at to see what the impact of that would be on how we deliver our internal control framework.
If I can just add that I do have meetings throughout the year with various staff from the audit team looking at identifying, are there any new and upcoming risks? Are there any changes? Have we changed any systems or anything to try and flag? Are there any areas where perhaps some further work is needed? That dialogue kind of does happen at various points throughout the year.
I think we also have the ability to tap into the audit team if we know we've got a big change like the custodian to ensure that we're getting some independent view about the governance we're putting in place in that change process to kind of reassure ourselves that we've looked at what we need to, although changing a custodian unfortunately isn't something that's new to us. So we do have that ability as well to seek some assurance ahead of doing the key piece of work.
I mean, I understand all the logic behind that, and in a large county council with all of the risks and challenges that there are, and limited internal audit resources. But I understand that. It just feels, given the scale of the operations of the pension fund. Not having an assurance opinion just feels, it feels, you know, I feel uncomfortable with it, but I'm not the person who has to sign things off. So
I suppose it's to which part of it do you feel uncomfortable with? Is it just the overall picture? Because there's bits that, say, Claire can pull upon. So obviously West Yorkshire will be audited around their internal controls and what they've got in place around the administration side. We've got LCC has internal control audits around our finance systems and how that's monitored. The governance assurance is really the key thing around how the fund is managed and how that investment stuff side is managed as well.
Yeah, it's just sort of bringing all that together in one, which this does to an extent, but no one is then saying all this is telling me that you've nothing to worry about in this space. But my conclusion from what this tells me is that there is nothing to worry about in this space.
If there was something to worry about, it would be in this.
Yeah.
We would know about it before the stage was Joe, but it would be formalised in admin assurance process.
I get it. I'm probably unduly nervous about these things, and used to different arrangements in other places, not just the one I work now, but that's every organisation has its own way of doing things which is appropriate to it. We mustn't make judgments based on other things. That's been helpful, and actually this was a very helpful paper, Claire, so thank you.
Do you want to make it an annual occurrence?
I think that would be useful, because it's something that then helps the board gain the assurance that it needs on a regular basis and actually supports our work to say to the county council that it's effectively exercising its responsibilities as scheme managers. I think that would be helpful.
Just it helps me, and I look at Claire on this. How, if we bring it back a year from now, we look again, how could it be different? What could it contain that it doesn't at the moment?
So if we fast forwarded to next year,
Yeah,
there would be different key controls from the financial processes within the council. Whether they would impact on your delivery, I couldn't say at the moment because we haven't agreed what they were. But for example, if we were to look at treasury management, that would be quite a significant level of assurance, once it's positive, that you would take from that, and that would be included within your annual.
right.
Yes.
So it's about what audits are doing on the key components that impact on the fund.
So we could see something more substantial that
More
was
relevant.
more relevant to us next year.
Yes. So one of the things we did look at was a sample of deductions taken from current staff. That was all absolutely fine. That was one of our key control audits that we did on the finance side. Each year we do different key controls on the county council process. So some years it will be more relevant, some years it will be slightly less relevant. But I think it all paints the picture of the level of assurance within the financial systems across the council. I assume if the board had any particular concerns or the committee had any particular concerns, they could be raised through for audit then to have a look at. So there are ways in if there are any worries that board members have about how we're managing.
Assuming those reports mostly go to the audit committee.
All the audit reports we do, every report we do.
Goes to the audit. I'm just wondering how easy it would be if there's anything specifically where reports related to the pensions board, if the pensions board could just not be, perhaps not send the whole report, but maybe just a section that talks about the side of things.
So
To say, as part of our audit into internal controls, we looked at deductions from salary, and that could be all deductions from salary. It could be pension contributions, it could be new contributions, whatever.
I think I understand the point you're making, Mark, but I'm very conscious of not wanting to create significant additional work for the internal auditing, because the internal audit team won't have written a report with a view to
No, with us specifically in mind.
doing things in that way. You can take a general level of assurance that in the context of the audit Claire talked about, the way things work for the pension fund is okay, because that's what we found. But that was a much wider piece of work, of which pensions related things were one small part. So I'm conscious that we don't want to be putting an undue burden on to sort of an annual summary of the various sources of assurance, and that I think would be helpful. I think if there was a specifically pensions related piece of work that you were producing a report on, then I think it wouldn't be unreasonable, but perhaps for that to come to the board or the committee, whichever seemed appropriate at the time.
And I think one example of where there was quite a bit of work done in, not necessarily as in an audit, but as in discussions and building the understanding and identifying where potential risks might be and how that all works, when we were first with Border to Coast and started doing our initial transitions across there, moving, hundreds of millions of pounds across from one asset manager to another. So that was done through the kind of the annual discussions, or the discussions that we have with audit about what's changed, what does that mean, what's in place to make sure it's going to work, and then that was all documented. So anything like that, then we can make sure that we do bring something to the committee and board. But I do think there is a lot of value in an annual report to the board, just to say, provide, this is everything that's looked at and these things will impact, and provide that assurance.
And it's a sort of reverse assurance, isn't it? There isn't anything you need to be worried about. Therefore, it's a sort of positive. It's a negative as a positive.
I think there's a lot going on that probably, because the pension fund on its own isn't a specific risk that we need to dedicate time to. It feels like there's nothing being done, but it's helpful for Claire to explain that there are elements of control work that's being looked at that will support the overall assurance.
Okay, thank you very much. That's been really helpful, actually. Thank you. Right, moving on. Training needs. So members are requested to share information on any relevant events they've attended. There's the highlights of the LGC conference in Birmingham attached, which seems to be more exciting than usual this year. I couldn't go because we had the pensions authority. Usually I only it's the second day. Any members got anything to add to any of that? We had a discussion previously about training needs and feedback. The conclusion was that the plan meets the needs that people have identified specifically. So, positive feedback on the plan.
If I can just draw members of the board attention, there is an update to Lola, so there is a new module which has been added to the recent developments. And it's a 10-minute video, but
It's still been updated, isn't it?
yeah, so it's adding in
the current issues.
It's in the current.
One of the weekly updates last week is this, or maybe this week.
I haven't been.
That's the cure for insomnia, is it? A 10-minute video on the plan.
Sorry, all I was going to say for it is that if and when I look at it, is it reported to you directly?
That module doesn't form part of the reporting to us, it's in addition to that, so we wouldn't then have done it on.
No, that's not.
Do not.
Fact that you don't know.
I think the email went out to all users though to say that there is a new.
Right.
Yeah, I've got one
new
there.
addition.
Yeah.
Yes, I should have received it done.
Yeah, it's fine. I just don't pick up.
So Claire gave the wrong answer there. Yes, we will absolutely know if
Yes,
it's.
you can. Yes.
Fine. Okay. Work programme is plan.
It is, yes. So the work programme is attached at Appendix A to the very brief covering report. The next meeting in January includes the normal fund update, and 6 monthly update on the pension regulated status scores. In addition to that, we've got an annual item with the data analytics from West Yorkshire, which was a presentation received by the board last year, which was well received. The annual employer monitoring report and a presentation on cyber security. There are also further work programmes for future meetings beyond that. And if there's anything else the board would like to add into those, then more than happy to have any comments or any additional items.
Got any ideas for additional things? I mean, clearly for this meeting next year, it would be this meeting be the appropriate one for Claire's annual report.
I've made a note of that.
Yes,
So we'll
yeah,
do a feedback
yeah,
into
yeah.
next October.
Claire, will the March meeting then, will it be joint training for the triangle valuation with, is it board only, or is it board and committee?
I think what we would do is a training session in the morning with the committee and then some further training in the afternoon with the board. I imagine if you sit in on both, there will be elements of similarity between them. But it's about getting the committee comfortable with the decisions that they're going to have to make.
So it is specific, and when I say that, it is board specific, the training.
It will probably be very similar. The difference will be that the committee will be asked to approve the process of assumption setting. Whereas for the board, it's providing the background, just what's going to happen, and the understanding that the committee, assuming they have approved the process. So it will, I'm afraid, be a bit of been there before, but obviously not all board members are able to make the committee meeting in the morning. So it's trying to manage the time.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, sorry, I'm just thinking ahead. Are you going to be engaging with employers as well? Is that not that, but is that start of the triangle? You're already there.
Started engaging with employers in
You mentioned the academies.
May, June. In May, we spoke with the other councils. We spoke with academies just earlier this week, yesterday, in fact. We've broken in our communication with employers now, we've broken them up into the various employer groups. So yesterday we invited all about 180 or so academies. I've had a grand total, I think 12 of them join our online meeting where we did a fund update and we covered the valuation 2025. So we will be sharing those slides and that presentation anyway. But we have already started that engagement, and then there will be more engagement obviously next year as we go through it. And we always do a kind of a wrap-up meeting at the end once the valuation is out. So that's normally kind of October, early November time, where we invite all the employers to a meeting virtually, where they're then also offered a one-to-one opportunity to go through their individual results. So we have kind of a plan of communication across the year to ensure that the employers are aware of potential outcomes, what might happen, and that they've got the understanding of the process.
So the valuation, albeit, is all, I mean, when I say that, you're already ahead of the anniversary date, 31st of March, in planning.
Yes, we had a meeting in Birmingham actually in September to kind of kick off the planning with the actuary, agreeing timetables. So yeah, we do start quite early.
Yeah.
data on from West Yorkshire has already been sent kind of up to end of March this year, so that the data cleansing gets done annually. Things are starting to be looked at on the longevity side, looking at historical data to see those how those have changed. So yeah, there's a lot of work. It's probably the year before and the year after. It's kind of a 2-year process every 3 years for getting the valuation done.
So sorry, am I all right? Sorry, can I just ask you, Matt? You know, you've got significant transfer into funds and that outstanding. Yeah. Will you be ready by 31st, you know, for that date to be, because some of those member data won't be up to date, will it? If you don't clear it.
Well, that's right. But you know, we have that every year, not just every 3 years, because it goes to months will be based.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it will be the same struggle, and we just about get ourselves over the line every time.
Right.
You know, there will be a few wrinkles in between because there's ongoing work, but we'll be, you know, in constant dialogue with you guys, will we? So
It's a push by West Yorkshire
Yeah.
and reduce everything.
Probably anyway, but I'm thinking like in the cloud issue, that and all of what you've been telling.
no,
I mean, it's a big ask.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
We're veering off the subject of the
Yeah.
work plan. So I think we've got to the end of the work plan. So I think the meeting closed. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks.